Being the successful one in the family can sound nice until you realize it comes with a hidden subscription plan nobody told you about. No free trial, no cancellation button. Just a lifetime membership in the unofficial department of fixing everybody else's problems. Welcome to SketchSense, where everyday money problems get broken down in plain terms, without the fluff. This one is about the family discount trap and why helping relatives can quietly sabotage your long-term wealth goals while everyone insists you're just being blessed. Because that's the trick, isn't it? Nobody calls it what it is. Nobody says, hey, can you delay your retirement by 7 months because I made a series of questionable decisions involving a car payment, a furniture store credit card, and a cousin who said he knew a guy? They say, can you help me out real quick? Real quick is one of the most financially dangerous phrases in the English language. It sounds small, temporary, harmless, like you're being asked to hold a door open, not become a one-person bailout program with a checking account and unresolved guilt. And the family discount trap almost never starts big. It starts with a ride, then a repair, then a little loan, then a bill, then somebody needs help moving, then somebody needs help with rent, then somebody's business idea needs support, which is a very elegant word for I would like your money, your labor, your time, and possibly your Saturday. Before you know it, you're not building wealth. You're operating a small, emotionally complicated financial institution where all the borrowers know your childhood nickname. And yes, helping family can be good. Let's be clear about that up front. This is not an episode about becoming a cold-hearted spreadsheet in human form. Nobody wants to be that person at Thanksgiving measuring affection in basis points. But there is a difference between generosity and financial leakage. There is a difference between helping someone through a true emergency and becoming the family's emergency fund because nobody else built one. There is a difference between lending a hand and having your hand permanently installed under someone else's budget. That difference matters. Because while the money leaves in little pieces, the cost compounds in ways most people never calculate. The dangerous part isn't always the amount you give. It's what that money would have become if it stayed attached to your future. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. When people hear opportunity costs, their eyes glaze over like someone just opened a finance textbook during a cookout. But opportunity cost is not complicated. It simply means this. Every dollar you use for one thing cannot also be used for something else. And with family favors, the something else is often your savings, your investments, your debt payoff, your business, your home repair fund, your retirement, or your ability to sleep without mentally replaying your bank balance at 2:17 in the morning. That $300 you gave your cousin may not feel like a big deal, but if that keeps happening every month or every few months over years, it stops being a favor. It becomes a wealth transfer. Not a dramatic one, not one with paperwork in a conference room, just a quiet one, a little money here, a free weekend there, a waived payment, a discounted service, a loan that becomes a gift because bringing it up would make things awkward. And somehow, the awkwardness always belongs to the person who wants their money back. Fascinating system, right? This is the family tax, not a tax you file, a tax you absorb. It shows up when you're expected to do things cheaper because you're related. It shows up when your time is treated like a public utility. It shows up when your success is not seen as the result of discipline, sacrifice, planning, and delayed gratification, but as proof that you have extra. That's one of the first major reframes. Your success becomes evidence against you. If you manage your money well, people don't always see the restraint behind it. They see the outcome. They see the car that runs, the house that doesn't have shutoff notices taped to the door, the credit card that isn't maxed out, the fact that you can absorb a problem. And because you can absorb a problem, somehow that problem becomes yours. That is not generosity. That is financial gravity. Everyone's mess starts rolling downhill toward the person with the most stable footing. And the stable person is usually tired. Because being stable doesn't mean being rich. It often means you said no to things other people said yes to. You skipped vacations. You kept the old phone. You drove the car after it stopped being impressive and became an appliance with cup holders. You packed lunch. You made boring choices. You built margin slowly. Then someone who made none of those choices appears and says, "You're lucky you're in a better position." Lucky. That word deserves a chair thrown gently across the room, not violently, just symbolically. Because yes, some people do have advantages, but in many families, the successful one is not sitting on a yacht wearing loafers made of dividend income. They're just the one who didn't spend every raise before it cleared. They are not wealthy. They are solvent. And there is a huge difference between solvent and wealthy. Solvent means your bills are paid. Wealthy means your money is creating options. The family discount trap keeps people stuck in that middle zone. Perpetually responsible. Perpetually helpful. Perpetually one unexpected request away from delaying their own progress again. You can be the person everyone calls and still be nowhere near the life you're trying to build. That's the second reframe. You're not being asked to share abundance. You're often being asked to surrender momentum. Momentum is the invisible asset. It's the progress that doesn't look exciting yet. Paying down debt has momentum. Investing every month has momentum. Building an emergency fund has momentum. Saving for a house has momentum. Growing a business has momentum. Even letting money sit untouched has momentum because it creates a buffer between you and chaos. Then a family request arrives like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. Suddenly, everything pulls sideways. You don't just lose the $500. You lose the habit. You lose the plan. You lose the psychological proof that your money is finally moving in the right direction. And sometimes you lose your boundary, which is even more expensive. Because once people learn that pressure works, they tend to use pressure again. That's not because they're evil. Usually they're not sitting around in a dark room plotting against your compound interest. Most relatives are not cartoon villains with a calculator and a grudge against your Roth IRA. They're just operating from need, habit, entitlement, panic, or a family culture where money has no walls. And if your family has no financial walls, you become the wall. Every request comes wrapped in emotional packaging. We're family. I thought I could count on you. You know I do it for you. After everything we've been through, you're acting different now. That last one is a classic. You're acting different often means your boundaries are interfering with the old arrangement where I benefited from your lack of boundaries. And that's uncomfortable because family money issues are rarely about money only. They're about roles. Maybe you became the responsible one early. Maybe you were praised for being mature, which often means you were quietly drafted into adult stress before you had adult power. Maybe you learned that love meant rescuing. Maybe saying no felt dangerous because peace in the family depended on you being flexible, available, and financially useful. So now, as an adult, every request hits two places at once. It hits your bank account, and it hits the old wiring that says, if I don't help, I'm selfish. That wiring is expensive, not because love is bad. Love is not the problem. The problem is when love gets used as a payment processor, and that brings us to the hidden math. Let's say you help relatives in small ways, nothing dramatic, a few $100s here, discounted work there, some unpaid labor. Maybe you're a designer, mechanic, accountant, contractor, hairstylist, photographer, tech person, handyman, or the person in the family who knows how to read a bill without panicking. Every family has one person who knows how to log into the portal. That person is in danger because once you are useful, people confuse access with entitlement. If your normal rate for a service is $1,000 and you do it for $300 because it's family, you did not give a $300 favor. You gave a $700 transfer. If you spend 8 hours helping someone with work you could have billed, rested, planned, or used to build your own future, that time had value. Even if no money changed hands, unpaid labor is still a cost. It just hides better. That's one of the reasons this trap is so hard to see. The damage does not always show up as a big withdrawal. Sometimes it shows up as missed deposits, missed investments, missed opportunities, missed weekends, missed recovery, missed focus. A lot of people are not broke because they bought too many lattes. They're broke because everyone with their last name treats them like a no-interest lender with emotional customer service. And when you quantify it, the picture changes fast. Imagine giving away or discounting $300 a month in family-related help. Again, that could be money, unpaid labor, or services you undercharge for. That's $3,600 a year. Over 10 years, that's $36,000 before you even count investment growth. Now, imagine that money had been invested instead. Over decades, depending on returns, it could become tens of thousands more, maybe much more. That's the part people miss. The $300 doesn't stay $300 in your future. A dollar invested in your 30s is not the same as a dollar handed over during a guilt-driven phone call. One gets time, the other gets a vague promise and maybe silence when repayment comes up. Compound interest needs time and consistency. Family chaos loves interrupting both. It's almost poetic in a financially irritating way. You're trying to build a machine where money earns money. Meanwhile, your relatives keep removing pieces from the machine because their machine broke and they never bought parts. Then they look at your half-built machine and say, "Must be nice." Yes, it was going to be. That's why the family discount trap is not just about cash flow. It is about legacy. And legacy is not a fancy word reserved for people with estates, mahogany desks, and children named after banks. Legacy is what your current choices make possible later. It's whether you can retire with dignity. It's whether your kids inherit stability instead of stress. It's whether your spouse or partner gets the version of you that isn't constantly drained. It's whether future you has options or future you is still financially recovering from being the generous one in every crisis. When you constantly subsidize other adults, you may feel like you are protecting family, but you might actually be transferring instability from them to you. That is the third reframe. Helping without limits does not erase the problem. It relocates it. Their emergency becomes your delay. Their shortfall becomes your skipped investment. Their lack of planning becomes your reduced retirement. Their pressure becomes your resentment. And resentment is what happens when generosity keeps getting charged without consent. Nobody wants to admit that. We prefer nicer language. We say, "I'm just tired," or "it's complicated," or "they've been going through a lot." And maybe they have, but a hard truth can still be true even when somebody's situation is real. Their need may be real. Your limit is also real. Both can exist at the same time. That's where people get stuck. They think saying no means denying the other person's struggle. It doesn't. It means refusing to make your financial future the shock absorber for every struggle around you. A shock absorber is useful, but it wears out. And some families will let the responsible person wear out completely, then act surprised when that person finally cracks. The pattern often looks like this. A relative has a problem. You help. There is gratitude maybe. The problem quiets down. No system changes. No spending changes. No income changes. No accountability changes. Then the problem returns in a slightly different outfit. Same crisis. New hat. You help again. This time with more irritation. They notice the irritation, not the pattern. Now the story becomes about your attitude. This is how financial boundaries get twisted into character accusations. You are not being tight. You are not forgetting where you came from. You are not thinking you're better than people. You are noticing that a bucket with a hole in it is a bad place to keep pouring water. And sometimes the most loving thing is not pouring more. Sometimes the most loving thing is refusing to participate in a cycle that keeps everyone weak. That sounds harsh until you think about what repeated rescue actually teaches. If someone knows that missed rent becomes your problem, they may never feel the full weight of planning for rent. If someone knows their business losses become your family obligation, they may call it entrepreneurship while you quietly become the investor who gets no ownership, no repayment, and no thank you card. If someone knows that your skills are free because you share DNA, they may never respect the career you build. Family discounts can sound sweet, but too often they are just a polite way of saying, "I value your work less because I have personal access to you." That sentence should bother people because strangers may respect your rate more than relatives do. A stranger asks what you charge. A relative tells you what they can pay, then waits for your guilt to do the negotiation. And if you accept that enough times, you start doing something dangerous. You start discounting yourself before anyone asks. You pre-shrink the invoice. You pre-prepare the excuse. You pre-feel guilty for wanting fair compensation. Now, the trap lives inside your own head. That is when the family tax becomes automatic. And this is where the practical lens matters. The goal is not to never help relatives. The goal is to stop confusing emotional pressure with financial responsibility. There are better questions to ask before helping. Is this a true emergency, or is it the predictable result of repeated choices? Will this help solve the underlying problem, or just postpone it until next month? Can I afford this without weakening my own plan? Would I still make this choice if guilt were not in the room? Am I helping from love, or am I paying to avoid conflict? That last one is brutal because it catches a lot of people. Sometimes the money is not a gift. It is a peace offering. You are buying temporary silence. You are buying the right not to be criticized. You are buying relief from the family group chat where logic goes to be buried. And that is one expensive subscription. A healthier system requires limits that are clear before the crisis arrives, not vague emotional limits, real ones. Maybe you decide that you do not lend money. You only give what you can afford to never see again. That one rule alone can save relationships, because nothing turns family dinner into a courtroom drama faster than unpaid loans and selective memory. Maybe you decide that discounted work still has a written scope. Family can get kindness, but kindness does not mean unlimited revisions, late night calls, or payment in exposure, which is already nonsense from strangers and somehow even worse from your uncle. Maybe you decide that your emergency fund is for your household only. That is not selfish. That is what makes it an emergency fund. If everyone can access it, it is not an emergency fund. It is a community wallet with your name on the overdraft notice. Maybe you set an annual giving budget, a real number. Once it's gone, it's gone. This turns chaos into a category. And categories are powerful because they remove the need to make every decision from scratch while someone is emotionally cornering you. You don't have to become cold. You have to become consistent. Consistency is what protects you from being negotiated out of your own future. And yes, people may react badly. That's part of the process. When you stop playing a role that benefited others, they may call it a personality change. But often, it's just the first time they've experienced your boundary instead of your exhaustion. Let them adjust. You are allowed to change the terms of access to your life, especially if the old terms were quietly costing you wealth, time, sleep, and peace. One of the hardest parts is accepting that some people will not understand the long-term goal because they are focused on short-term relief. You're thinking about retirement. They're thinking about Friday. You're thinking about your kid's future. They're thinking about a bill due tomorrow. You're thinking about compound growth. They're thinking, but you have it. Both perspectives may feel real, but only one of them is responsible for your future. And nobody will protect your compound growth for you. Nobody is going to gather the family and say, you know what? We've really been interrupting Steve's investment horizon. That meeting is not coming. There will be no committee report, no apology brunch, no certificate for years of subsidized emotional labor. You have to see the pattern yourself. You have to name it. You have to stop treating every request as a moral emergency, because that is the trap. The family discount trap turns financial decisions into loyalty tests. And once money becomes a loyalty test, math loses every time. You can't build wealth if every boundary has to survive a trial by guilt. You can't invest consistently if your surplus is always considered available. You can't create a legacy if your future keeps getting outvoted by someone else's urgent present. So, the better lens is simple. Help from overflow, not from the foundation. Overflow means your household is stable. Your savings plan is intact. Your debt strategy is not derailed. Your retirement contribution still happens. And the help does not create resentment. Foundation means the money was holding up something important. Do not give away the foundation and call it love. Love should not require you to become financially fragile. And that may be the cleanest takeaway from this whole thing. Generosity without structure becomes self-sabotage. Family support without boundaries becomes dependency. Helping people while quietly harming your future is not noble. It is just unpaid damage with a warm backstory. You can love people and still say no. You can care about family and still charge fairly. You can be successful and still not be available for every crisis. You can be generous and still protect your long-term wealth. The goal is not to become unreachable. The goal is to become undrainable. Because being the responsible one should not mean becoming the permanently available one. Your financial legacy needs protection from more than inflation, bad markets, taxes, and surprise repairs. Sometimes it needs protection from familiar voices asking for just a little help again. And when that moment comes, remember what is actually at stake. It is not just this favor. It is the pattern. It is the opportunity cost. It is the future version of you who either gets the benefit of today's discipline or gets the bill for today's guilt. If this episode hit a little too close to home, that's the point. Most financial mistakes don't feel like mistakes while they're happening. They feel normal, routine, even justified. That's how they quietly chip away at your wealth. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown, because each episode pulls apart another one of those normal habits that secretly cost you money. Drop a comment with the financial situation that's been bothering you. The thing that doesn't quite add up, the bill that keeps showing up, the decision you're second guessing. That's what gets decoded next. I'm Elias Thorne, and you've been watching Sketch Sense, where we don't just talk about money, we expose exactly where it's slipping through your hands. Catch you next time.